Welcome back to another video about the Chevy Nova. We got two parts that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about some interior wiring. It's probably going to be the last interior wire update or wire update in general for the car. I've done the engine wiring harness video. I did the video about the wires in the trunk. And now we're going to look at the last part for the dash gauge cluster and the center console gauge cluster. And then after that, we're going to do an update on the seats for the Nova. So make sure you watch till the end of the video if you want to see what kind of seats we're putting in this car. But for now, let's get started on these gauge wires. So we got the cluster here. This is the dash cluster with the dash bezel. These are the indicator light sockets here. This one's clipped in here. We've run the majority of the ground and hot wires for the bulbs. This is the ground wires is most of this, and then the gray or silver wire is the wire for the light bulbs that go on the tach, clock, and speedometer. And then for the indicator lights, this is the graphic that we're using. There's one on each side here. This one is for not having the center console gauge cluster. So you can see you're running multiple wires to some of these lights. Since we're using the console gauges, we do not need the fuel light. We have a fuel gauge on the center console. We don't need the generator light. We have a battery voltage gauge in the center console. We have an engine temperature gauge and an oil pressure gauge all in the center console. So we're not going to be using the indicator lights for those, which is why we're using this graphic right here. Because as you can see, there's no hot wires running to the ones that we're not using. There is quite a bit of a ground wire split going on. So as you see the graph, the ground wires coming out of the connector, and then it splits to go two main directions. The first part goes to the bulbs for the tach, speedometer, clock, and also for the gauges themselves. And then the other split comes to the light indicators down here. So what we've got here is the ground wires and the hot wires, like I said, for the bulbs. Our way of doing this is the ground wire basically starts over here on the side, which is going to be the passenger side of the cluster. And this is going to connect to the ground wire coming out of the wiring harness. And then the main part of this wire just runs all the way around and all the way up to the socket right here. And then we're using some splits. So we're using these right here to do the splits. The way these work is you run the main wire on this outside. It basically just runs all the way through it. So for example, you'd see it sitting like that on a main wire. And then the wire that's splitting off of it, if I can get this to focus on it, goes in the far inside channel right there. And then when you are ready to clamp it down, you squeeze this metal piece, get this metal piece right here, all the way down so that it cuts through the insulation and makes contact with the copper wires. Then you just clip it over with this little clip to hold it in place, and you have a split. So that's essentially what all of these taped up places are. Our main wires running through here. Get this gray one out of the way for right now. Then we have our first split here. We've got the wire running, the ground wire running to the clock. And then our second split, ground wire running to the light bulb for the clock. We don't have a split right here for this bulb because we were waiting on another socket that we ordered to get here. And then once that arrives, we'll just use another one of these, make a split, ground wire, go to that socket. You come around here, we have two splits on the driver's side of the gauge clutch. I had to think for a second there because it's upside down. This is the driver's side. And if you look at the graph on the driver's side, you have the left blinker and then the bright light indicator that have ground wires denoted by the black lines. So you got two splits, one to each. And then on the passenger side, you only have one ground wire that goes to the blinker. So if you come over here, we have our last split that goes there, but then we also have a split for the ground wire that goes to the tach itself. We are going to get an actual 3-point connector for this. We're not just going to leave the bare wire connected. That is something that we ordered this week, and we're hoping to get it by this weekend so that we can get all of these set up and ready to be connected. We just put it on here to kind of hold it in place for the time being. But that's the ground wire for the gauge cluster. That's the way we did it. You might think of a more efficient method, but that's what we came up with for this particular wire setup. And for the light bulb wires, we're essentially doing the same thing. So this is going to connect to the gray wire coming out of the wiring harness in the car. So you've got the main wire running, and to be honest, I'm not sure which goes where. I think the main one goes over here, and then the split takes the other one to the clock light bulb. And then again, once we get the light socket for the speedometer, we will have one more split that carries the hot wire to that light bulb. So that's pretty simple there. That's just two of the wires. The other wires are actually built into the wiring harness. So if we come over here to the car, we have the left dash indicator, so that's the left blinker, the tan wire, and then the high beam indicator. So this tan wire is going to be the parking brake indicator for the emergency brake. And then on the other side, we have the right beam indicator. I said beam indicator. Dash indicator is what it's actually called, which is for the right blinker. So those will just plug directly into the respective sockets for the light bulbs, for the indicator sockets. So that's a dash. Let's come over here and take a look at the center console gauges. So we're going to come in here. In the car, this is the center console gauges. As you can see, battery, temperature, fuel, and oil. I did not break it. It's not currently bolted on, so don't worry about that. We're just going to take a look at the bottom side here. See the best way to sit this. That should be good right there. On this graphic here, got it upside down. We've got the black ground wire, and on the graphic it shows the wire coming out of the wiring harness and going to this point here, and then a smaller wire going to here, and then there's a split where you have a wire coming out to actually ground it, and then the other side of the ground wire coming around to this point here to ground both of those sides of the gauges. We don't have the top mounting point. I guess I should probably hold this like this because that's the way the image is done. But to sit it down, it's just easier to look at it like this. So this is where that top point is. We don't have a little screw there. And we did check, there are ground wires on the inside of it for each one that are grounding to the metal. So instead of putting something in here, running a ground wire here, and running another one to here, we just ran the ground wire directly to here. I said here a lot, but I pointed, so you know what I'm talking about. So that's what we basically have on this ground wire. This first connector is going to go to this ground point, and then we have the connector here. The second one is going to go to the bottom ground point, bottom according to the graphic, this one right here. And then the very last one is the one that will be grounded to the body of the car for the actual purpose of grounding the wires. So simple enough there. And for these we used these insulated, I'm going to call them O-ring connectors. I don't know exactly what these are called, but you can see it's really easy to just kind of put two wires in here together and then crimp it down so you have that connection to create those splits. The other split wire we have is for the light sockets. So if we look at this, we have two light sockets here for this set of gauges, and then two light sockets here for this set of gauges. You have the first split here that brings the two sockets out. So that is this one here. That's going to be the sockets for the temperature and battery voltage meter. And then our split actually comes off of the top part of this splice and comes around, and then we splice it to two wires for these light sockets that are going to go on these, the oil, pressure, and fuel gauges. And for the other wires, we have, I'll start over here on the graphic, pink wire, that goes to two places, the temperature and to the fuel. Brown wire, that runs over here to the other side of the fuel gauge. Dark green wire runs up here to the temperature gauge. And then there's a dark blue that we're not using because we don't have an electric oil pressure gauge. So that's these wires right here. You can see we've got the pink one with its split happening from that connector to the other one. Tan wire has its connector on. Green wire has its connector on, and blue wire that we're not using, we're just going to cap off. So that's really all that for the center console gauges. Those connectors on there, we'll just plug them right onto where they go on the back of the console gauges. But that's it for the wires. Like I said, that should be the final wire update for the car. So now we're going to talk about seats. If you watched a previous video I did, I think it might have been 3 Nova videos ago, maybe 4, where I talked about we were taking some seats apart so that we could have the frames cleaned and powder coated. That's actually been scrapped. We're not doing that anymore. So here's the basic rundown we had for the seats. Originally, we took the seats out of the car when we bought it originally. Those seats were the ones we were going to use. We took them apart, took the old seat covers off. Then when we got it off, we realized there was a lot more rust on those frames than we thought. Springs were broken all over the place. So we scrapped those. And then we bought some Chevelle bucket seats. They were in really good shape. So our plan then was to have all of that professionally cleaned and powder coated, and then get everything reupholstered, new foam, new insulation, use the Nova SS seat covers that we have and everything like that. Then we came across a guy selling 69 Camaro houndstooth seat covered seats, a full set, bench seat and bucket seats. And I looked at my dad, there was no hesitation. I said, we've got to find out if these are still available. They were, and thankfully we were able to get them. I actually came over here to where we got them. I'm not going to get them all the way out because we've kind of got some stuff covered up here, but I'm going to show you. So this is the rear bench seat. Beautiful, beautiful houndstooth, black and white with the black vinyl around it. Oh, that looks absolutely amazing. So I'm going to cover those back up. We don't want those getting dirty or messed up while we are working on the car. Things you need to know if you're looking to put Camaro seats in a Nova. First, the back seat. 69 Camaros are wider in the back than Novas are. The rear seat for most 69 Camaros is not going to fit in a Nova. But if you find a deluxe interior rear seat, those do fit because the deluxe interior rear seats are shorter from side to side. So they actually fit. I'm going to turn this light around. They actually fit between the wheel wells in the Nova. The only thing you need to know about that is because the seat is shorter, you will have a gap between this panel and the side of the seat on both sides. Nova seats, the back of them fit in here, but then they wrap around to fill this space. But you can get armrests, and that's what we're actually going to do. We're going to put armrests in the car to fill that gap, which is what the Camaros do when they use deluxe interior rear seats. They have armrests that fit between the edge of the seat on both sides and the side panel of the car. So that will fill the gap. That'll get the interior looking really nice. We'll have a deluxe Nova interior. Front seats are also looking really good. The difference is the mounting points for the tracks. Now, we did put the driver's side front seat in, and we realized that for the mounting points, these 3 points were perfect. They went right where they would need to be for the tracks. This one was a little bit off. The rear passenger side mounting point for the driver's side seat was not in the right place for the track to fit. So we are going to have to adjust that. So that is also something you need to know. If you're looking at using Camaro bucket seats, the mounting points are different. You have to consider making some kind of adjustment in the floorboard of the car to mount the Camaro seats. So that's something that we're working on. But I am extremely excited about these seats. Houndstooth seats have always been my absolute favorite style for classic cars. When we started working on the Nova initially, many years ago, when we started taking it apart, I told my dad, I was like, I want houndstooth seat covers for these seats. And then I found out they only made them for Camaros. Factory only made them for Camaros. You could go get custom seat covers made, but that's also really expensive to do. So I was really disappointed. But then when we found out we could use Camaro seats in the Nova, found these houndstooth seats, so that's what's going in this car. But yeah, so that's the update for this video. By the way, I am using this new lapel mic here. Hopefully the audio actually sounds better. This is my first time using this. I do want the audio to be more consistent. I realized in other videos that when I would turn the phone around to show stuff and then turn it back to me, that the audio would change because of the placement of the microphone. So I got this. Hopefully that creates a more consistent sound. I won't know for sure what it actually sounds like until I get it and work on editing. So if this doesn't sound great, I am going to continue working on it. I'll figure out the best place to put this microphone so that everything sounds good, or as good as I can get it. But yeah, I'm making investments in the channel, trying to do these videos as best as I can for you guys, or girls, anybody that's watching. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully the wire update was helpful for you in some way if you're working on something like this. Thanks for checking out the channel if this is your first time. Thanks for watching my videos if you've watched them before. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. But for now, I'm just gonna cut it right here. Until next time.